What is the investment needed in order to create a return on investment of your hustle, your passion, and your purpose? This is the ROI. Hello and welcome to the ROI, the show where we sit down with creators and innovators to get their insight on how to generate a return on your hustle, your passion, and your ambition in order to meet your bottom line and get to the top. I'm Rhonesha Byng, founder and CEO of Her Agenda. I'm your host today. And on this episode, we have the honor of having Chana Ewing, the founder and CEO of GeenieBox. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I love your work and everything that you do to advocate for us, Black women, and lift us up. So you do that especially, you have a few different companies, but you do that mostly with your company, GeenieBox. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about it and what inspired you to launch it.
Awesome. So first, we should say that you are a genie.
Yes, I was a genie. I was a genie. Check it out, April 2017.
Yes.
Was it 2017?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's really great to be interviewed by Rhonesha, who's one of our genies. So essentially what we do at GeenieBox is identify brilliant women like Rhonesha who share their stories in this box format. So instead of I like to liken it to like a magazine feature, mm-hmm. where you get a deep dive into a woman and like what's behind the way she glows up in the world, right? So she might share like her favorite book or some lifestyle products or an event that she loves to attend or people and places. Just you get a sense of like who she is in that feature. So what we like to do is like bring that into this like in a tangible box form that gets into people's homes and really gives them those tools and those ideas so that it's more than just like reading about them. You actually get to like take all that stuff home with you and apply them to your life.
Yeah.
So there's always a book in the box. We do a fair amount of authors, so oftentimes it's Black women authors who serve as our genies. And then there's 3 or 4 lifestyle products. And the concept is really to give the woman on the rise, the woman in charge, inspiration and motivation on a monthly basis.
It's basically like a motivation box.
Yes.
One time I got a box that had a Black Girl Magic notebook mm-hmm. in it and had a ticket to go to Apollo for an experience that they were having just for like young patrons. Mm-hmm. And so it's really, really innovative. What made you start it? What was the inspiration?
Absolutely. So a friend reminded me the other day that I've actually been in this like women's empowerment space for 10 years as of next year.
Me too.
So, yes.
Well, as of this year, it's 10 years for me.
Okay, excuse me. 11 years.
But around the same time, before people even knew what women empowerment was.
Absolutely. So the first thing that I did was this thing called Michelle Brunch. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, like, Michelle Obama is like, peak genie, if you will. And so the Michelle Brunch experience was a lot of the same like template of the box in that we would identify an amazing woman. She would curate a brunch around her leadership, share her story for the people who attended the brunch. It was usually about like 25 women. And we did it in the name of Michelle Obama and not like all of the women that we were identifying. We were saying they were essentially living that sort of Michelle life.
Yeah.
And we started that in March of 2009. So essentially when Michelle Obama became Michelle Obama, as we popularly know her as, right? As
Forever First Lady.
Exactly. So we did that for a number of years until about, I think the last one was in 2014. And we did it in New York, we did it in New Jersey, and we did it in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. But like what I loved about that experience, it was its intimacy, but also like that was also the thing that I found challenging about the experience because it was only an event series, and at that time I was like, how do we scale this? How do we like reach more women? How do we celebrate more women? And around that time, around 2004, 2005, I started learning a little bit about the tech space, and I also started learning about basically what like mottos that you could build, like what's a technology company that you could build without any tech background. So what they call like a tech enabled company.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, okay, like I'm not an engineer. So, the subscription box model would give me an opportunity to build something that was tech enabled, bring me into the space, and also scale this idea of celebrating Black women.
Yeah.
So,
Scale it and perhaps get some investment.
Absolutely.
But we know it is statistically harder for Black women to raise money. Unfortunately, even though we're so innovative, we're the most qualified, the most ambitious, all of the numbers say it.
Absolutely.
But tell us about your experience raising capital. So you make this switch. You're doing this company that's tech-enabled, GeenieBox. You're tapping into the market of Black women, which now is trendy. Everybody wants to tap into that market. So did you raise money? What was your process like?
So for the first 2 years, so we started shipping boxes in March of 2016. So for the first 2 years, we did not raise any money. It was just completely bootstrapped, self-financed. We had a few early conversations, and in those early conversations, it seemed like it was going to be like an uphill battle to raise money. So I said to myself, why don't we just kind of like prove a little bit this concept, do a little bit of like product market fit, that whole thing.
That's the problem with being a Black woman entrepreneur. You have to prove,
Exactly.
prove instead of the other side, white men, and they get invested in on potential.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And it's like,
So you were trying to prove.
yes,
and
I'm like, I could go off on that whole tangent.
Yeah.
But because the thing about what you just said is that, like, I feel like white men in particular get money to play, to figure things out, to, just explore their vision, where Black women do not necessarily get to have that luxury. And I think that that's really unfortunate, considering we build businesses at a faster clip. So over the past 2 years, it's just bootstrapped, and then only this year is like actually when we've started to go out and raise. And so it's been a really interesting journey, to say the least. We have our first investors. We have a pipeline angel. I'm sure you're familiar with pipeline.
Yes.
So for your viewing audience, Pipeline Angel is in an angel network that is all women and femme investors who invest in women and femme entrepreneurs. So that was super important for us to like work with an organization that's so aligned, obviously. Yeah. So we're like, I feel like because of the way we're starting, I'm actually excited to go on and invest. And raise. Yeah.
You'll invest one day.
Yes.
It's gonna be the Genie Fund.
Yes. Absolutely.
So you just got your first big check from an angel investment company, which is so amazing. But since you've gone through the process and you study this, what needs to change? What do Black women entrepreneurs need to do? And then what do the investors in the community need to do to change the ratio?
Absolutely. So for the entrepreneurs, one thing that I wish I would have done a lot earlier, even before we started this fundraising journey, is talk to entrepreneurs who have raised. I basically waited until we decided to go out there to have these conversations. And what's really been interesting about that, it's just like the transparency kind of prepares you for the rejections. Like I've most of the women that I've spoken to, and I've spoken to about 10 so far, all Black women. They're like, oh, like I went on 200 meetings. It's like, wow, you went on 200 meetings. And there's like maybe 10% of that is, how I got my money. And it's like, wow, I had no idea that people were having this level of deep dives, just the how to do it. So in terms of like taking as many meetings as possible, understanding that friends and family is not literally your friends and family, but it's like your alumni networks, the boards that you sit on, the friends of friends. Also, this idea of like ask. So the whole there's a popular refrain that says, ask for a check and you don't get anything. Ask for feedback, you get money. That didn't really work for me. Like, I asked for feedback and I got feedback. And so
all the feedback, give you all the advice. Okay.
No one said like
a check.
Right.
Also.
Exactly. So no one necessarily turned around and was like, oh, hey, here's your check. But in that. So prepare yourself that for whatever may happen, and don't necessarily go off of what you read online. So I guess my biggest advice for the entrepreneurs is take as many as meetings as possible and talk to as many entrepreneurs that have raised as possible.
Okay.
Now for the investors, I think they don't necessarily understand our market. Like they're now just scratching the surface of even women as a category and as a market, with femtech and all. So they're like now just even understanding why it makes sense to even build tech products for women.
Yeah.
And they definitely don't understand, what it means to build products for a particular demographic, And so I feel like investors need to just do some education.
Yeah.
Like why would anyone want to go after this as a consumer market? I feel like you could do a little Google search,
Yeah.
and actually find out that like Black women spend about $1 trillion
Yeah.
on consumer products, right? Like that's a very easy thing to do. But I tell people this, and they're like, really?
Yeah.
Your market's so small. I'm like, our market may be small, but in terms of the amount of money that they're spending and the sort of place that they hold in the Black family, that they actually make sense as a consumer segment. So I think that would be my advice to the investors, to just actually do a little bit more of your homework.
Be more open-minded, I don't know if this is something that's relatable to you, but I find, the second they don't understand it, they dismiss it.
Absolutely.
And instead of looking into it and seeing, well, what is this market that I don't know about and haven't paid attention to? And actually listen to Black women. If Black women founders telling you this is the market, you don't understand it, just do the research.
Absolutely.
Anyways, we could go on forever on this topic.
Absolutely.
But I want to talk a little bit about, a lot of Black women entrepreneurs are juggling multiple things. Either they have their day job and their side hustle, or they have multiple companies. In your case, you have multiple companies. How do you balance all of that together and, not go crazy?
Balance is something that I would like to work on all year. It's not something that I've been really good at, to be quite honest. Like I've been more of a burn the midnight oil type of person. Like work all day, work all night. And really, it takes its toll. And also, like, one thing that I feel like I've really learned in 2018 was that, like, there's always going to be more work, right? Like, you can never do enough. So if you are not necessarily taking care of yourself, though, none of that work actually matters. You know, so it's not actually helpful to work yourself into, like, an early grave or to even in terms of productivity. So my best advice on that is actually to just really go for balance, and that's something that I'm going to be looking to do next year.
So do you prioritize self, or do you prioritize bottom line?
I prioritize self. And the reason why I prioritize self is because the bottom line will follow. So if you prioritize bottom line, you may never reach it, right? But if you're in tip-top shape, I believe you will reach your bottom line. Like, you will exceed your goals for the year if you're in tip-top shape.
Yeah. So I want to switch to a segment that we call Inspiration to Invoice. And a lot of people want to be the boss. They want to be in charge. But like we were talking about before, people don't always have the coins to actually pay to be the boss. And so you need to pay people that work for you. Can you talk about that experience for you? Because as a Black woman business owner, I know that sometimes we do thrive off of friends helping, sisters helping, volunteers. But then that moment when like the bottom line makes sense and you actually can pay people, to me it's like, this is amazing and empowering. What was that moment like for you? And do you remember what that moment was?
Absolutely. So since the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, just because of the type of work that I've done, I've done a lot of marketing work. So just because of that type of work, I can't necessarily do it all. Like, I can't be the one making up graphics for social media. Like, I can't build websites. So I think it was like a lucky choice that I went into this line of work, because it actually made it impossible for me to do everything. So in doing that, it feels like I've always had to work collaboratively, and I've always had to pay people. And it absolutely feels good to like pay people. It absolutely feels good when you pay people on time and when you don't owe people. I think, in terms of what I've tried to do, and some of the lessons that I've learned around that, is to make sure that when for the consultants who might be listening, is to make sure that, when you're developing those invoices or you're developing those contracts with your other businesses, is that you are actually invoicing for at least 50% over what it is that you need to pay for people, because sometimes things happen. Someone might tell you that their work is going to cost you $100, and then it ends up costing you $200, and so you need to be able to build in for that instead of thinking that you might be okay. So that means that you actually have to decide to charge more for your services, which is a whole other story around women and Black women just getting to the point where you feel comfortable with being no, I'm going to charge you market rate. I'm not going to charge you, my scared rate, but I'm going to charge you market rate.
Yeah.
When you have to pay people, that forces you to do that.
Boss up, ask for more so that you can pay people
Absolutely.
to help you execute the vision at the highest level.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and also your insights. I think I loved that you told us what it was and then also the lesson that you get out of it. So hopefully you enjoyed that as well, and stay tuned for more insight on future episodes of the ROI.